putting up with Ben. He's the Dennis Rodman of this team. He's got a lot of complaints, but he also pulls down 20 rebounds a night. That's a sports reference.
How much venture would you have needed to raise to make it a successful business?
About 1.4 billion. No,
just a little bit of change. The company on my mind, on just about everyone's mind, is OpenAI. People are actually shifting from Google over to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is recommending products they should buy.
Kyle, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, we pretty much boiled the ocean here. They only have to be the largest B2C subscription company in the existence of humankind, as well as, at the same time, the largest ad-driven company.
My business blunder this week is almost getting blocked on LinkedIn.
By who?
By LinkedIn itself.
Oh, I thought it was like Reid Hoffman blocked me. You're a sick puppy, Kyle. You're that efficient on LinkedIn. They think you're a robot.
Oh, Apple's gonna get demonetized. That's just wrong.
From Mostly Media, it's Mostly Growth. Go-to-market strategist Kyle Poyer and CFO CJ Gustafson share smart takes on growing revenue and running a company. Pricing, unit economics, AI, leadership, candid insights for CEOs, CFOs, and CROs, or anyone else aspiring to climb to the C-suite. This is Mostly Growth.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. You just launched a new AI product. The new pricing page looks great. I'm talking crisp. But behind it, last-minute glued code, messy spreadsheets, and running ad hoc queries to figure out what to bill. Customers get invoices they can't understand. Engineers are chasing billing bugs. Finance can't close the books. Well, with Metronome, you hand it all off to the real-time billing infrastructure that just works. Reliable, flexible, and built to grow with you. They turn raw usage events into accurate invoices, give customers bills they actually understand, and keep every team in sync in real time. Whether you're launching usage-based pricing, managing enterprise contracts, or rolling out new AI services, Metronome does the heavy lifting so you can focus on your product, not your billing. That's why some of the fastest growing companies in the world like OpenAI and Anthropic run their billing on Metronome. Visit metronome.com to learn more. That's metronome.com. As a CFO, you're expected to bring clarity to everything, including how your company manages ownership. The tools you use should make that easier, not harder. But when they come with hidden fees, data you can't always trust, and support you can't rely on, you end up with more frustration than clarity. That's where Pulley comes in. Pulley is a cap table management platform built for finance leaders who need accurate, decision-ready data from a system that works for your business, not against it. With Pulley, you get intuitive workflows, audit-ready reporting, and support you can count on, all backed by predictable pricing you can plan around, so you can stay compliant and make smarter decisions about your company's future. Manage everything from fundraise modeling to ASC 718 reporting to custom liquidity programs, all on one trusted platform. Hundreds of high-growth companies like Linear, Fathom, and Runway trust Pulley to help turn ownership into a strategic advantage. And joining them is now easier than ever. You can switch to Pulley in as little as 5 days. And for a limited time, they're offering 25% off your first year. To claim your exclusive offer, visit pulley.com/mostlymetrics. That is PULLEY.com/mostlymetrics. Please, guys, I really need this. Pulley.com/mostlymetrics. Welcome back to Mostly Growth.
And we're back.
And is this thing on? Kyle, what's up, man?
Hey, CJ. How's your week?
It's going pretty well, wheeling and dealing. I'm putting up with Ben. He's the Dennis Rodman of this team. He's got a lot of complaints, but he also pulls down 20 rebounds a night. That's a sports reference for all the 96 Bulls fans out there.
What's a rebound? Well, so I heard you should be in good spirits today because the IPO window seems to be reopening. It was shutting for a minute there, but I heard a new company might be going public.
Yeah, and so this is a B2C company. It's called Klook, which is supposed to stand for Keep Looking. And so, Kyle, have you ever booked a tour activity once you arrived in destination on a vacation?
So I've used Airbnb experiences, which I think is relatively new, but had a good experience with. And then Viator to me is the 800-pound gorilla in the space. I've never come across this Klook company.
Well, they're mainly in Asia, so it makes sense.
Well, I guess
yeah.
that explains it.
They're
mainly in Asia, but going public here?
Yeah, so they're gonna go public in the US. It's technically what they call an ADR. So I don't know what ADR stands for on the top of my head, but it's basically like something deposit receipt. Yeah. But
Automated dialogue replacement.
that's a different one, Ben. Yeah, exactly. But it'll be traded in the US, but they'll be headquartered abroad. And I've been following Klook from a personal interest standpoint since probably 2019. So I've written about this before, but me and my wife tried to start a company in the experiences space, which, like I said, is the fun stuff you do when you get to a destination. And the idea originated out of a personal frustration. So we were on our honeymoon in Hawaii, and we were supposed to swim with dolphins in the open ocean off of Kona. It was a really cool experience. And it was canceled the day of. So we woke up that morning, it was canceled. Captain probably went out. The skipper went out and had a few too many martinis, did like 72 Google searches, 14 phone calls, and we failed to find another boat that was going out that day, which sucked because, like I said, we were on vacation. We only had 2 days left. And we finally booked a similar experience for the next day. And although it had capacity for 15 people, there were only 5 people, Kyle, on this entire boat. And one of the tourists, by the way, it was this incredibly hairy Dutchman in ill-fitting Speedo who insisted on wearing his snorkel mask from when we left the dock to when we came back, which literally has nothing to do with this business model or Klook, but it's something I think about frighteningly often.
Let's land the plane here.
So we started this company, Bubble Booking. It was in that space, and we thought there had to be a better way to do this because, like, the captain going out, he lost that inventory forever. He's barely making money on that. We wanted to find something to do. Like, the whole takeaway is there's no global distribution system for tours and activities here, which the hotel industry has and which the airline industry has. So think about Klook as a way to piece together the fragmented space of when you arrive on vacation. Like, I know this one may not be totally down the fairway to a lot of the people who, like, you know, what do you say? Like, if you work in B2B enterprise SaaS, everything looks like B2B enterprise SaaS. But I do find it fascinating to look at companies that have a different business model, serve a different end customer. And there's a lot of nostalgia in this one and a lot of money that I lost too.
You know, why haven't there been big players in this space? Because I also think there haven't really been big software companies built in the space selling to tour operators. Is it because it's, you know, a very fragmented mom and pop ecosystem where folks have like a local experience and, you know, it's a service driven business. So they kind of sell as much as they can support and then that's about it. I guess, is it because of the fragmentation or is there something else going on?
Well, it's important to call out why our startup failed. It's a unit economic black hole that you get into because we were caught in like this LTV to CAC dead zone. So it would cost us a pretty penny to acquire a customer, but they probably only went on vacation once or twice a year. And each time they went, they'd have to remember us rather than going through the hotel concierge. And while people are definitely willing to spend more on vacation than in normal day-to-day life, we still had a low average ticket size. So if you're clipping 20%, and in this company's case, they get 10%, 11% of the net value, it's a hard place to be in. You have to truly make it up for in volume.
And you've got to acquire the consumer and you've got to acquire the operator. So you've got double the spend on customer acquisition.
Exactly. And so there's a company called Fair Harbor who was acquired by Booking.com. And it's one of the bright spots of vertical tourism-based software. And what they did is they went after the supply side by saying, hey, we'll build you out a website for free so people can book stuff online. So we'll turn it into from having like just a landline phone and a notepad in your little shack that you have the canoes next to. We'll actually create an online bookable experience for free for you. And we'll just charge the other side of the ecosystem, which is the people booking. So that's one way to skin the cat. But it is tough sledding to have to acquire both sides.
Yeah, I like that on-ramp. Yeah, reminds me a lot of the, you know, Open Tables, the Resis of the world with a customer that is probably much lower LTV than someone who goes out to eat, you know, once every couple of weeks.
Exactly. And so DoorDash, they have a low price, but it's very high frequency. Same thing with Uber. Something like a Stock X, you probably buy more expensive shoes or GOAT, but you don't do it that often. And so there's a quadrant and you don't want to be in that death corner of low frequency, low ticket size.
And so with your Bubba Travel, or, you know, I forget the name
Bubba
of what
Booking.
you called your business. Bubba Booking. I guess
Named
the
after my
alliteration
first
was
dog.
there. The Bubba Booking, so you lost $200K on it. How much venture would you have needed to raise to make it a successful business?
About 1.4 billion. No.
just a little bit of change.
Unfortunately, I still remember it was $209,640. So that one hurt, but it was kind of like my real world MBA. I think honestly, it would have been more like I had to quit my job to go all in to raise money, because that was one of my learnings from it, which I've written about. If you're not willing to go all in on something, why should somebody else be willing to go all in on you and give you money? But yeah, it would definitely take a lot of money because you have to be in multiple places at once.
That's a good pivot. So I want to talk about sustainable business models with you. And the company on my mind, on just about everyone's mind, is OpenAI. They're spending hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe even trillions of dollars on infrastructure build out over the next few years. And so to me, they've got to be generating what? Let's say 500 billion in recurring revenue in 5 years, just as a back of the envelope, right? So if they're going to be generating 500 billion ARR, how the heck can they get there? What do you think about this?
They have to 25x from their current 20 billion run rate.
Well, yeah, they did reportedly about 5 billion in 2024, and they're on track for about 20 billion in 2025. So pretty good growth, but it's hard to kind of keep compounding at that rate from 20 billion to 500 billion. There's only so many people, only so much spend on tech.
Okay, so let's lay out the landscape here. Let's go over the current makeup of their revenue, how it's split up, and then let's go over the options.
So what I've seen is that about 2/3 of their revenue right now comes from ChatGPT. So consumer subscriptions and business subscriptions. And I think that a lot of the ChatGPT revenue is consumer, but I don't know if I've seen the breakout of ChatGPT by consumer versus business. But let's say 2/3 is more of a PLG SaaS company, and then 1/3 or so is the API business, more of the B2B opportunity.
And it's funny because Anthropic is split the opposite way.
Yeah, I think maybe even more, right? I think they're like 80% B2B, but on a lower overall ARR base.
Yeah, they're like 85% back-end APIs for businesses to use, I believe. But yeah, okay. So that's good context.
So yeah, so if ChatGPT then, if it's 2/3 of 20 billion, then maybe it's somewhere in the order of 10 to 15 billion ARR. I was trying to think of like what consumer subscription companies are the biggest out there. The one that I came up with was Netflix. They're doing about 45 billion in run rate. Can you even think of any other, even bigger consumer subscription businesses than that?
So Netflix came to mind too. I didn't check the revenue figure before we got here, but I believe they just eclipsed 300 million paid subscribers. And I think the US population is about 330 million. So that's just mind-boggling to think about. But if I try to square that with the revenue figure you just gave me, that's not enough.
No, I mean, that's still, that the biggest company from a consumer subscription standpoint that I could think of would get them about 10% of the way to the 500 billion run rate. So consumer subscriptions might have a role, but hard to think of that, scaling. They're either going to need to add B2B subscription revenue or, think about other routes. So one other route I had in mind was advertising. And, there's a pretty big space there. Meta's at 200 billion, Google's at 400 billion. So from a TAM standpoint, I think there's a lot more potential upside on the advertising space than on the consumer subscription space.
Okay, consumer subscription space. Does Amazon break out how much is Prime subscriptions?
I have not seen that, but that would be a really interesting data point. I do think a lot of Amazon, a lot of the secret around their profitability is their Prime subscriptions and then the marketplace sales. Like most of the things sold on Amazon aren't things that Amazon actually makes or is the seller on. They're more of a reseller with a marketplace and they take a rev share on it. It's a pretty profitable way to just take a take rate on just about everything being bought in the economy.
All right, so Ben pulled it up. It's about the same as Netflix. That's actually also mind-boggling. I know it doesn't solve
a little over 200 million subscribers worldwide to Prime. I think Prime, what is it? About $100 a year? Do you know how much they charge?
Yeah, it's $100 a year. So that's how they're getting to 45 billion on a smaller number of subscribers.
140 annually.
140. Oh, it went up. I remember when it was 99. Okay.
Amazon Prime, not too far off from where Netflix is, but still, that's way shy of what OpenAI would need to get to if they want to get to 500 billion.
What if you add in my Strava subscription? That's got to be a couple. All right, we're still short.
We're still short. And then, so we talked about consumer subscriptions. We talked about ads, right? With Meta being at 200 billion, probably one of the most pure play ad businesses, although they make money on other things too. They could go after purchases and take in a take rate. Amazon does about 700 billion a year. And I think a lot of that is from purchases and getting a rev share on it. And then you've got, B2B and maybe looking at Salesforce as the largest pure play from a B2B standpoint. From all those routes, do you think this is a company that's just going to need to go after everything hard? Or do you think there's going to be one area that they should double down in?
I think you have to lead with one area and then layer on with another, similar to how Amazon has Prime, but really the main thing I think is the take rate that they get on the advertising. And I guess you could say they have a third thing, which is AWS. It's a completely separate business unit, but you discover that over time. What I'm looking at now, how much revenue do you think Snapchat does? Because I still think of them as one of the top 5 social media companies up there. Because, okay, let's say top 4, because I think Mount Rushmore only has 4 heads on it. So if we're saying, ChatGPT has to become bigger or potentially the biggest within this ecosystem of advertising models.
Yeah, I have no clue on Snapchat. All right, Ben's pulling this up. Looks like around 5-ish billion, 5-6 billion run rate. So not too bad, but
yeah, dude, like that's
well short of 500 billion.
Yeah, we're shaking out the couch cushions for quarters here. It says last 12 months here, 5.77 billion. So,
but the difference, right, is that Snapchat, it's for, young people, fleeting video, there's some ads that, you can get there, but it's not really embedded in a transaction workflow. Meta's properties are a lot more shoppable. Brands are on there, they can sell stuff really easily. And I think with ChatGPT, people are actually shifting from Google over to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT is recommending products they should buy. And so those ads, I would think, are much higher intent ads. Like, if I were a brand, I'd be willing to spend a lot of money on a targeted ad when someone's searching for my product. I'd be willing to spend a lot more for that attention than just someone scrolling Snapchat.
It happened to me for the first time where I typed in a shopping related question on ChatGPT where I was researching a watch brand, and it actually had a link. And that was like an aha moment for me in their monetization model. I know they've probably been doing it for a while, but up to this point, just my habit has not been to go there for shopping. So I think consumer behavior has to change along with that.
I increasingly go there, and I actually think a lot of other people are like me. I was searching for hotels recently. I want to make a trip in the fall to the Adirondacks next year, and I book these things so far in advance. And I had a really hard time finding nice hotels that would be dog friendly. A lot of the booking sites don't really let you search that. And so what's nice about ChatGPT is you don't get 1,000 responses back. It'll curate the top 5, top 10. You can get pros and cons. You can do a lot of the research and back and forth with ChatGPT. And then I just went out to the, booking sites directly to then complete the booking. But my decision was extremely influenced by what ChatGPT told me.
I do think B2B is not cornered by Anthropic, but you truly have to make your business model catered towards B2B. So then if you say, well, what are the best B2C plays to have that layer cake of revenue here? My take is to go ads and then also make money off the purchases from those ads.
Yeah, I think to me, that's such a no-brainer. And then obviously there could still be a consumer subscription component, but you even see there's ads on Netflix now. There's ads on Hulu, on Amazon Prime. Consumers are expecting ads, and I think these are extremely high value ads. So I would agree. I think ads are going to be coming pretty soon. And then the interesting thing for me will be how they'll report back to brands. So there's this huge rise of vendors helping companies figure out how they're ranking in ChatGPT and how to get mentioned more frequently. Well, if ChatGPT moves to an ad model and a purchase model, they're probably going to release more products to let you see your visibility directly and find ways, where you could spend the most money to pay for better visibility.
So let's say they somehow get 1/10 of the world's population to pay monthly $20. I don't think 1/10 of the world could afford, I don't know, could they afford $20 a month? Netflix is less than that. But if I look at Disney Plus, Bob Iger made it, Vanna Krantz came on the podcast and she was a CFO at Disney Plus. He wanted to make it so everyone out there could afford a Disney Plus subscription. So they didn't go past $650 a month at first. So I did 800 million, 1/10 approximately of the world's population, times 12, times 20. You're coming up at just under $200 billion. So say you have $200 billion run rate there. You're still going to make up 300 million. The question is, can you be as big as basically Meta on ads or Google to make up the rest?
It is it is a tough climb, but I think that the first thing they have to do is have the attention of consumers, right? The second thing they have to do is have stickiness, where people form a habit around ChatGPT and it's the default mode. I think that they're there for a lot of consumers, not every consumer. A lot of folks still turn to Google or others, but increasingly that is ChatGPT. And, they can go from being that destination to now figuring out the best ways to monetize it. And I think that'll be the shift over the next 12 to 18 months.
Kyle, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, we pretty much boiled the ocean here. They only have to be the largest B2C subscription company in the existence of humankind, as well as, at the same time, the largest ad-driven company.
One of the largest. They have to
one
be
of
a
the
lot
three
bigger
largest.
than Snapchat.
And we're there. I mean...
Hey, doesn't sound too hard. Well, and or taking a cut on purchases, right? And so if they can get 100 billion from purchase take rate on and be be essentially the Stripe for the broader economy and literally everything you buy, they can get 100 to 200 million on ads and another 200 million on consumer subscriptions. Like, you can imagine a world where they get there, but it's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy. So, all right. This podcast, flash forward 5 years, Kyle. Congrats. We're the largest, best, sexiest B2B podcast in the world. Have they made it there? We're going to clip this someday.
We'll clip it right now. I'll make sure it gets out there. I do wonder, though, I don't know if you guys talked about Sora 2, where is that potentially the avenue that they want to go to next? Try and cut into the streaming model of I don't know if the Sora 2 product is designed for streaming at all, but I could see that potentially trying to cut into that streaming budget.
It feels like they're going for more of a social media vibe with it, where they kind of democratize the ability to create content, but then they can monetize on the eyeballs they get. I think that's more of an ad play. I don't know how much, premium content there's going to be, but I think it's more of a YouTube alternative where most of the money will be on ads, and then they probably allow some sort of subscription fee over time as there's good quality content. But I don't know how YouTube splits out between ads and subscription, but I suspect it's still mostly ad driven.
But isn't it driven by token purchases though?
I think you're probably right. I just have a hard time believing that that's the long-term best monetization path, because you'll want to democratize the ability to build and create content if you're able to monetize on the attention side. And so it depends on how valuable they can make the attention monetization.
YouTube's pushing up on 40 billion, it looks like, in revenue. So number 2, I think, to Netflix. Some people think it's going to be larger than Netflix over the next 3 years. Ben makes a good point, though, that basically every large company has become a production studio. Apple has, Amazon has. I'm sure there are a host of others. So
is YouTube actually producing content now?
That's just ad revenue from YouTube.
Yeah, we'll have to check back in a few years. But, had another fun brainstorm for us if you're game, CJ. So I've heard that you've launched a recruiting service, Mostly Talent. I don't know what you're calling it. I'm going to call it Mostly Talent. And I was curious how you're thinking about charging for it. Maybe we could fix your pricing.
I'm so glad I have a podcast because I couldn't afford your consulting fees.
You could afford.
All right, Kyle. Can I lay out the current state of how recruiting is done today?
I don't know how much time we have, but go for it.
I'll do it in under a minute. Bring on the clock. Ready, set, go. All right, so there's 2 common types of searches today. One is called contingent, and that's where you only pay the recruiter if a hire happens. It's usually 20 to 30% of a first-year salary. Okay, so you get it at the end, but you may not get anything. But CFOs hate it because there's misaligned incentives on the recruiter. They just stop working if they don't think they can fill it. And they also tell the candidate to take more money. The other is retained search. And this is most common for exec hires. And you pay a fee regardless of outcome. And the fee is usually 25 to 33% of total comp. And you pay 1/3 up front to start, 1/3 at a milestone, like starting the interviews, and 1/3 upon placement. But CFOs also hate this one because you have to pay before you get anything, and it's an extremely long timeline. So those are the two different ways that it's done today.
And yeah, nice job. You did say under 60 seconds. Those are the services angles, right? There's also, hey, we can hire recruiters internally, give them tools. There's also, hey, we could do job advertising on Indeed, on LinkedIn. The challenge is, advertising or DIY models are still pretty, resource intensive, and they don't necessarily, do the outbound work of finding new candidates that are not actively applying for jobs. And so, you only get folks that are actively looking versus the passive candidates who are maybe harder to fill.
The other kernel in here is that most tech companies, their recruiting teams are specialized to either help hire people who sell the product or people that build the product. But G&A is kind of this dead zone where they don't have a specialty in doing it, and it doesn't happen all the time. Like BDRs, you're always trying to hire more BDRs, or A's, you're always trying to hire more engineers. And there are a lot more cookie cutter roles there, and it's also just a larger percentage of the org. But finance hires in particular, and so the area that I've honed in on are the people under the CFO, so the right-hand man or woman who's either a VP, director, or manager.
All right, so you're disrupting the recruiting space. You're helping hire, director level finance people. How are you charging for this today?
Okay, so I'll give you the initial way that I'm doing it, and then I'll give you kind of an out-of-the-box one. So right now what I'm doing is basically just a form of the contingent search. And what I'm doing differently is it's a flat rate. So instead of a percentage where I'm going to negotiate against you with the candidate, it's $25K if I help you land a manager, $50K if I help you land a director, $75K if I help you land a VP.
That's expensive. I guess it's actually probably much more reasonable than what someone would get elsewhere, and the incentives are aligned, but that's not too shabby if you can help them hire someone.
The percentage comes out to about the same or minus 5% less depending on where the person's being hired, or potentially 5% more. So it's in that range if you were to try to do it like, hey, we'll pay you a flat 25% or something. So it's not completely out of whack. You also have to remember you could do a ton of work and also not even have it as an exclusive search and lose out and make nothing.
And are you doing everything that a recruiter would do? So are you helping figure out the type of candidate they should hire, getting candidates to apply or, show interest, interviewing them and kind of passing them on to the hiring manager?
And so this is my advantage where I have a database now of over 300 people who have opted in from the newsletter to say, hey, I'm passively looking. And so what I can do is I can activate a pipeline of candidates really quickly rather than saying, okay, thank you for hiring me. I'm now going to go ping a bunch of people on LinkedIn.
So you have a group of vetted candidates that are interested, and you're trying to pair that with, really good quality jobs. And then ideally that becomes a feedback loop where having good quality jobs gets more people interested. As you have more people interested, you get more employers on the other side.
Yeah, you got it. So I wouldn't say I've completely hacked, but I've jump-started I've got around the cold start problem that you usually have on the supply side, and they can tap into that to start interviewing people faster. And there's also the element of like the people who are reading mostly metrics on nights and weekends of self-selected into being nerdy people who enjoy this type of stuff. So it's the type of audience that they're usually going after.
So I think the model that you described, I like the alignment aspect of what you're doing. The price does feel a bit expensive, and maybe they're just used to it and it's competitive with the market. From my vantage point, like a lot of the successful recruiting firms end up placing they get several roles within the same org. Like the company maybe hires a CFO in your case, and then they're fully building out that manager and director level. And so they're not just hiring one person ad hoc, but they're hiring, 4 or 5 people over time. And how can you make it more affordable for people to just have you be the one-stop shop for all of their hires here versus really thinking critically about, oh, wow, CJ is kind of expensive. We're only going to do this if it's a really important hire that it's like we're really having a hard time filling elsewhere.
You make a great point. How can you be the one source they go to build out their entire finance department rather than just like this is a one-off thing and I'm paying a ton of money for it?
Yeah, because your benefit over other places is like you have a lower cost model because you already have an audience that's vetted. It's less people intensive. You can undercut some of the more traditional services firms without sacrificing on quality. And so while most companies, I wouldn't recommend using pricing as a competitive advantage, in your case, like you kind of can because you have a lower underlying cost. So if you have a cost advantage, you can have a pricing advantage.
And I do have a full-time recruiter who's going to partner with me on this. So it's not like the cost is zero, but if I can do, and this is where it pays, I think, to be extremely focused on who you're trying to serve. So we want to only serve CFOs and hire the people under them, right? We're not trying to actually place the CFOs because CFOs are our customers. Otherwise, we have nobody to sell to. And we're trying to help them with managers of like FP&A, strategic finance, or controller on the accounting side, directors and VPs. Like it's extremely focused. And if I have 70,000 readers and say at least half of them fit that description, then there's a wider pool where I know I was making fun of ChatGPT for making it up in volume, but you can kind of do that. Or I was making up for, yeah.
Well, so one idea for you would be, so you have these advertised rates as a, one-off placement basis. And I think it's actually helpful to have rate that's fairly high just to show like the quality is good. But what you could do is you could say, hey, look, if you want to work with us on a retainer basis, we can take up to X number of hires over the year. And there's a platform fee for it. And then you actually save 50% for every hire we make. And so that way you position it as like half the cost, but you can make up for it by having some, upfront fee that kind of make sure that there's some skin in the game and make sure there's some commitment.
So can I run a potentially wild structure by you? And you can tell me if I'm off my rocker. All right. So it's super official because I even wrote it down by hand on this piece of paper. So for $5,000, I will send you a list of 10 candidates that I think are great fits for your role. Now, remember, I've been a CFO, so I've either worked in these roles or I've hired for them. I have a pretty good eye for who's a good person to put in front of you. So $5,000 up front for 10 of these. You tell me which of the 10 you actually want to talk to, and then I'll go out, and this is where it becomes matchmaking, less so recruiting. And I will ask those people, and at that point, I tell them what company it is if they want to have a conversation with you. And so I'll make an intro, and you take it from there. I do not want to get involved in your recruiting process, okay? You probably don't want me in the weeds with you. I don't really want to do it. I create media for a living. But if one of the candidates land, then I get another $5,000 at the end. So $5,000 up front, regardless of outcome, $5,000 on the back end if it's successful. What do you think?
I mean, if I were a CFO, I'd have a hard time with that model because like, what are they getting for 5K? It's like the idea of people that might be a good fit. They're like, hey, I could probably search LinkedIn and find similar profiles. Like they don't actually get introductions. They don't have a clear way to contact these people. They could maybe try to reach out to them and then the candidates would be like,
I make the introduction. I make the warm intro between the two if they both opt in.
Yeah, I'm just saying with the $5,000 piece, they get like the names of the people, it sounds like, but
these
not the introductions. And so wouldn't people try to go around you and like ping the candidates directly? And then isn't that kind of a disjointed cluster of an experience?
All right, Kyle, let me back up here. So I'm going to give you an Excel sheet sent to you via email, the most deluxe email ever. And it's going to have 10 candidates that I think are great fits. And if both of you want to talk, I'm going to send another email introducing you both so you can talk.
See, what I would do is I would send as a lead gen or like a conversion tool, a list of 10 candidates you think are a good fit for them that's anonymized without LinkedIn profiles. If they opt in, then you basically say, hey, look, it's, X $1,000 and your first intro is free. And then if you want more introductions, like that, they're X per, and we can't guarantee them unless the candidate opts in.
So what I'm struggling with is, you can tell this is a model that people don't do. It's not something that's in a box that you can just wrap your head around. And so like, I think the whole idea of having this media business and potentially adding other services to it is I wanted to do something that had less execution risk. Like, oh yeah, I mean, like I'm not trying to, recruiting firms have existed forever. I'm not trying to start something brand new. So with this, I'm kind of introducing another risk to the equation.
Yeah, introducing a totally new model. This is where I see where you're going with wanting to have a model that fits more the matchmaking style, but I would just try to. So in my experience, when you have a cost advantage over incumbents, it can often work to have a similar model as the incumbents, but like go a slightly more customer friendly pricing model and undercut them on price. That way, like your clients totally understand how to buy you and they can see that they save money on your model versus the alternative. And so like it just makes the price advantage much more visible if you have a similar model to the competition. If you start going this like totally wacko model, people actually can't even see that there's a cost advantage because it just feels like complicated and apples versus oranges.
So now we've come full circle. Do you think the best model is just instead of charging 20 or 30% per role fill, just to charge 10 or 15%?
It's a fair question. I actually liked the fixed fee per level, but then having the variant being basically having the one-off offering or the ability to essentially do a retainer model where they pay a platform fee and they get half off any searches that they take on. I think with that type of, if you have those two models, you have a pretty good offering relative to the alternatives. It's competitive and you incentivize people to have a longer term relationship with you.
I like that too because it gives me more revenue visibility, and then it also makes me stickier within their ecosystem for future hires. So it's not like I'm just negotiating and try to hire one person.
All right, next up, we got a report out from Rippling. Take it away, fellows.
CJ, did you see this new report Rippling released where they coined a term SAAD?
Yeah, that was a great acronym. I had to dig in more because I was like, what is this? Is it a PDF of sad dinner pictures?
They're calling it software as a disservice. So Rippling, kind of one-stop platform across finance, HR, a bunch of different functions. They surveyed, about 1,000 people or so, and found out that, every department essentially is dealing with tool sprawl. And then when you add that up, a typical company has 100 different apps that they're stitching together somehow. And then they just start hiring people to manage apps and then probably find new apps that they can manage. And so it's incredible that we've gotten to this point in tech where there's just so much software out there that now one of our biggest challenges as an industry is like dealing with the tool sprawl from having all of these different platforms that we use.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at the arc of software, which the report somewhat addressed, and in the 1990s, it was integration. So now you can integrate data from different places. But the problem is it just like sits there in this dumb database. You can't do much with it. Then the next move was a deployment model where SaaS changed not only what software did, but how it was delivered. And then you got to the 2010s where it was composability, where you shifted to having a stack that was through APIs and all these other tools. But like you alluded to, Kyle, I think during like 2020, 2021, the average number of tools for a company that was called 100 people was like 9 tools per person. So now you end up with, yes, they all kind of talk to each other, but you also need people to manage all the tools.
It's wild. And then you probably need procurement teams to have visibility to then manage the costs and the negotiations with all the tools. And like you can just see how this adds up. And then with AI and vibe coding, I think we've just increased the number of different tools and categories of tools. So I think this is a good call out by the team at Rippling and worth calling attention to. I also personally, I'm finding this with newsletters. And I'm saying this as a newsletter writer. I've clicked subscribe to like dozens and dozens of newsletters. And now I'm like, I don't even know which ones I've opted into and which ones are just randomly sent to. But I'm like, I have newsletter overload at the moment.
Next up, we got some business blunders for you. Whoopsie.
All right. Well, my business blunder this week is almost getting blocked on LinkedIn.
By who?
By LinkedIn itself.
Oh, I thought it was like Reid Hoffman blocked me.
So I was like going through all of the different like connection requests and notifications and just like I was on LinkedIn, I think, for a lot of the day on Wednesday. This is when I released a newsletter about the SaaS benchmarks report. And LinkedIn thought that I was an automation bot. So they were like, we have locked you out of your account for 24 hours because you're using an automation tool on LinkedIn. It was like, I wasn't even using automation. That's just me being fully addicted to your platform. Has that ever happened to you?
You're a sick puppy, Kyle. You're that efficient on LinkedIn. They think you're a robot.
Not that efficient, just I think spending that much time on it. It was definitely a wake-up call that I was too on LinkedIn, but also like while how much power that one platform has, like if they ban you from LinkedIn, that's like a huge blow to any ability to, promote other things, get in front of this like audience that I have almost 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. My message is like, that's a primary way I communicate with a lot of people is LinkedIn rather than email. And so getting locked out of LinkedIn for 24 hours is like a huge blow. It just makes me thankful that I've diversified into Substack and other platforms. And not all of my eggs are in the LinkedIn basket.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk to Brian Balfour in the coming week. He may tell you that Substack's going to close the attic door also and make it so you can't get out. So beware.
All right, well, tell me a business blunder that's happier.
This one's just funnier. It relates to being terminally online. Like you mentioned to Ben, if you want to click on that tweet, that the guy, Tuomas Artman. So I'm on X a lot, and I can never find the stuff that I bookmarked to come back to later. Because a lot of times I want to write about something that I saw or share it with people. And I always feel like it's moving around in the menu. And Kyle, I'm not a product guy. Remember, I'm a CFO. But I'm just going to call a spade a spade. They do a real shit job on Twitter of organizing like what each of the options should be. And what he pointed out is on his like tray for the options, his number one thing to click was puzzle games. It's just like who's doing the testing over there?
I hate that so much.
Like, how do they decide the priority? Like that shouldn't be the number one thing that you see.
That is a good business blunder. LinkedIn's been doing that a lot too. Really trying to push these like games that they have. And they'll even send notifications of like people you're connected to are using these games. Use them too. Like I don't need another reason to be spending time on LinkedIn. Did they just see like the New York Times doing well with its games and now they're all like, we want to be the New York Times?
That's what I was wondering too, because isn't the New York Times, is it called Wordle or what's it called?
Yep, Wordle.
Isn't that like the number one downloaded app or it's top 5?
I don't know.
But either way, it reminds me of the Facebook days where Farm Bill was huge. We've come full circle now where they're trying to push all these mindless games on you.
I have one other business blunder to share that'll be quick. So the fine folks at Apple released the iPhone Pocket. Have you seen this? Are you going to get one of these?
Where is that located on your body?
It's like you can use it as a crossbody bag or, something else. But the information in their newsletter, they compared it to Borat's onesie, which once you see that image, like you just can't unsee it. It is so accurate. So
yeah, and that just
for anyone not watching on YouTube, you're going to have to see the side by side.
We're going to get demonetized.
Oh, Apple's going to get demonetized. That's just wrong.
It's like a satchel.
It's a good term for it.
What is Alan from The Hangover? He's like, it's not a man purse, it's a satchel. Indiana Jones wore one.
Oh man, this is what they've come to. Apple can do better.
Mostly Growth is a Mostly Media production. Executive produced by Ben Hillman. That's me. Nothing said on this podcast is intended to be business or investment advice. It's the sole opinion of CJ, Kyle, and Ben. Just some guys who love talking growth. Mostly. If you like this podcast, hit subscribe. Give us 5 stars or hit like. The algorithm overlords thank you. Drink water, call your mom, and have a great day.